All right, we're live.
All right, Third Chance, episode 16. We are here with the always present Mr. Jeff Dragovich. How are you, Drago?
I'm great, blessed, living my best life today.
Good. What's been some good things that's happened since last week?
Man, my family's healthy. Nobody's sick. I mean, we went through some times of everybody being sick. I got 4 kids, so when we get sick, it's like a month and a half usually, which usually sucks. So I'm blessed. It's not summertime and my kids aren't off and nobody's sick. So that's a blessing for me.
That's good. That's good. How about our episode last week? How eye-opening was that?
Yeah, dude. Brock was crazy with the fentanyl project on what he's doing for people helping with fentanyl. It's like the stats, to be honest, like when he told me about 60% of people die in their home from fentanyl overdose, like that shook me a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just we don't want to get into politics because that's a whole different thing. But the eye-opening stats and commentary he had about the fentanyl just pouring over our borders and how bad it is, and when he said 100 times worse than 4 years ago, I'm just like,
yeah, open borders, bro, insane.
It's not good. It's not good for our future. It's other countries trying to kill us through drug abuse. So, why don't you introduce your friend Alex and talk a little bit about your guys' relationship? And we got a little bit of reverb going on, so we'll be mindful of the echo. But why don't you just roll with Alex's introduction? I'll let you ask some questions.
Yeah, bro, we do the best. I wanted to bring on my buddy Alex out in Arizona. So I met this dude through one of my buddies, Rob Adams, who's an agent here in Vegas. And he hit me up one day and he's like, "Hey, my boy, I'm in a men's group with my boy." And I'm like, "Oh, cool, men's group." Like I do a lot of coaching. So I just thought it was like coaching, right? Like we do a lot of mortgage coaching so we can do our job at a high level. But what I came to find out is he was like running a men's group and we met every Thursday. And to be fair, it was like when I got in, it was kind of like getting back into the rooms of like NA and A, but I was dealing with people that were being open and honest about like what they have going on in their life that necessarily wasn't in recovery. And I just feel like when we connected, I was like, man, if I could have connected in a group like this group setting, I wouldn't say newly out of recovery, but just hey, I'm doing an A, I'm working the program, but able to connect with a group of like-minded men who maybe not necessarily have the same issues as me, like that felt just super, super powerful to me. And so we became boys. And so I wanted to come on the podcast and introduce him and kind of break him down on what he does for other men, just because I feel like it's more than just addiction. Like, we do recover, we do find happiness, we do find wealth, we do find a partner, but then how do we continue to stay, be open-minded with like-minded men? And that's the dude I'm doing it with.
That's awesome. So I would say this is looking a little bit past recovery, and you went through recovery, and maybe as you're coming out of recovery and coming out of a program, this is a good next step, right?
Yeah,
I always got to be looking at the next step, the next piece of growth. I always got to be growing as a man and feel like I'm growing, and that keeps me out of the former life of the hate and the self-doubt and the shame and all those things, the trauma from childhood that all led to the addiction, right? So if you grow and you continue to grow, and I call it stacking, keep stacking good habits, right? And have that next step of growth and stack that on top of your other habits that you form maybe in NA or AA, then you can just keep stacking and growing. And if you stack enough growth, you'll have that staircase to, I believe, to heaven. I believe to success. I believe to a happy life.
To just be a good dude. Like Alex is a good dude. And so like, I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Yeah. Thank you guys, man. I appreciate it. And when I got this invite, I was like, dude, I'm down. I know you had mentioned, I think you made an assumption about, addiction, right? I think a lot of us are addicted to something, you know what I mean? And some of us are addicted to things that are very, people keep in the dark, or it's out in the open, right? But for me personally, in my life, I was around addiction my whole life. My brothers, they all got caught up. I saw the bad it did to a lot of my family. I had sports growing up that I think that was one of my saving graces outside of, I think, God's hand on my life. But I've had my own journey of things, I mean, there was, seasons of, weed, and there's seasons of, pornography, and on all those things that are at such a deep level, and they're so hidden that a lot of times, I think a lot of men struggle with, in general. It doesn't always have to be the hardcore stuff. So I feel that I'm in the battle and in the struggle, and I know, like anything, like you guys probably know better than anybody, is that you got to be vigilant. You can't just be, hey, I'm good, and all of a sudden, you fall and you're back to square one, right? So I want to lead with that. But thank you for having me on. You know, I believe that this was a passion project, the Men of Consequence thing, and thankfully, Jeff, you joined us, and we've had a lot of great men in there that have been open and vulnerable. But I think men are seeking community, and especially after COVID, I think we lost a little bit of that community when the workforce stopped going into the office, because that was, as much as we love. I've been working from home for many years, but I will say that a lot of people that when COVID hit and you no longer went to into the office, that actually became somewhat detrimental to a lot of people's social kind of the way that they socialized and actually had community. And so community stopped, and then it was abruptly stopped, and then COVID kind of whatever, everything started opening back up. And then I think they just forgot how to get back into community. So I think there's this yearning for men, especially men, to connect with other like-minded men in the journey of life and fatherhood and marriage and faith. And that's what Men of Consequence is really about, is providing that avenue for men to collaborate and build a brotherhood and friendship where you can lean on each other and have success not only in business but in life. So that's really what I would say the essence and the spirit of Men of Consequences is about.
That's awesome, dude. So like you growing up in Vegas, and I mean we've talked a lot, like you grow up pretty wild, and when you say your brothers get caught up, like when you started to think about like putting this men's group together, was that like kind of in the background on like, hey, like getting men together that are like-minded to create something that's powerful? Like what was the background on like starting to think of that? Was it always because of COVID?
No, I think that elevated the opportunity. I don't think it was because of COVID. I think it was actually it was very selfish. It was me wanting to connect with some of my buddies that I hadn't talked to in a while, and it was like 7 or 8 of us, and I reached out to every one of them. I was like, "Hey, dude, you guys down to just connect every?" At that time, it was every Tuesday. It was called the Men's Business Alliance. So we were just going to talk about business and all that. Well, what happened was the conversations kept going into more meaningful things. And then they started inviting more of their friends. And I'm like, okay, this thing is turning into something that I didn't actually intend it to turn into. But I realized that the need was at the heart of it was that we were all seeking community,
Yeah.
and we wanted to be connected with other men that are in similar paths. And it's not about like being successful, so aligning with successful men. It's about, at the end of the day, I believe like we're all on a rung. We're on a ladder. We're all on a rung. Some of us are above, a little bit higher. Some of us are below. But I believe that if you're below, you have to be reaching up for help. And there's people up there that are going to reach down and pull you up. And then they pull you up. And then now I need to reach up and I get pulled up. And then so we're continuing like climbing up this eternal ladder because it never ends. The journey never ends for growth. So we keep climbing, but we have to be in service and of service to each other and be intentional with that to help each one of us kind of grow to their potential, right? So that's what it turned into, was like these, all of us collectively helping each other, no matter how high up we are in that ladder of life and success and all that, and no matter how low you are, we're all here together, and I know the journey of somebody that's been low, and I can help them. And I need somebody that's been higher than me to help me get to that next level. So it's this reciprocal process that was
Yeah,
then
that's dope.
created what it is today. Yeah.
Yeah,
Alex,
for sure.
What do you think is the main difference? Obviously, your name of your men's group is pretty profound and says what you guys are about. But give a description of a man that lives without consequences and a man that does, and maybe some differences that you see and how their life turns out, their happiness level. I think masculinity has become a almost like, you hear like toxic masculinity and it's like frowned upon, right? To be masculine. And I'm on this journey of I read a great book called The Warrior Poet. Like, hey, I want to be soft and gentle and protecting and kind, but I also want to be dangerous if I need to be dangerous, right? And I'm working on being both of those things, right? So, talk a little bit about a man that lives without consequences, because I've been there in my life and it turned me into an addict. So I love your statement, what you've built, versus a man that lives with those consequences. So just answer that a little bit.
Yeah, great question, man. So I think um, the man that's living without consequences, and I'm in my 40s. I'll be 44 this year. Um, I actually look at a lot of my family, and I see men that have given up. Men that have even given up on their family, that they've, even people close to me, and those are men, and there's many of those men that exist in society. I have some that are very close to me that I'm always pushing towards becoming better. But I think there's this idea that it's living really in selfishness. Um, and I think what the heart of why people live selfishly, a lot of reasons, but I think one main key component is that they lack an understanding of how powerful the word is to themselves and the promises they make to themselves first, to then keep those promises with others. And so you think about this. So a lot of people make promises to themselves every day. I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to start doing this. The day goes on and they break the promise. Now, in their minds, they might not think that that's significant. But what's happening is that it's actually eroding trust with themselves to actually then be able to execute on the things that really matter in life. And it's like anything, it builds. It either keeps eroding your self confidence and trust for your ability to actually create the life you want, or it's going to elevate you if you keep your word to yourself. If you keep those promises first to yourself, you become more empowered to then make a life that's worth living. So that's the difference, is that the man of consequence understands that when he makes a word to himself, he has to now keep it. So I'm also, and we're not perfect, obviously. We make our commitments and sometimes we don't follow through, or we make a promise to ourselves and we miss the mark. But I think there's also a lack of awareness for the man that doesn't have a sense of consequence and what that means versus the man that is aware and has now been brought to task on, like, hey, when this happens, you now have to own it and do something about it so that you can be congruent in your conscience and with your spirit, right? And how you're going to live. So that's I think the main differentiator is between somebody that can keep their word and somebody that can't. And it's not about the big promises, it's the small stuff that everybody seems to not understand, that is where the power lies. If you can just stay committed to the small, you will for sure be able to be committed to the bigger things that are going to be required of you in life.
So give some examples of maybe some promises that you've had to, maybe you let go in your life and you saw how it showed up and they seemed small at the time, but they turned into bigger things. And then once you started on this journey of starting this group and being a man that has consequences and being a man that keeps in word to himself, give some examples of how this has showed up and turned out in your life.
Yeah. So in my life, when I started to understand that was, it's interesting. It's like there was a point where I felt like ignorance was a little bit was bliss. I actually now I'm like, oh, like I now know more. I have more knowledge. So I have to do something with that knowledge. And previously, what I thought was a man, right, was, and I've always would hang my hat on this because, being married at 20 and raising 8 kids, I have 5 now I've been 2 marriages, 8 kids total. I would hang my hat on, like, how could anybody abandon their child and have somebody else raise them? That was something that I had a lot of pride in, right? But that pride is empty because at the end of the day, like, yes, it's important to be a father and provider, but there's something to be said about actually living with being a man that you your kids want to aspire to be like. All right. So in my journey, I was living, providing, making money, doing great, but everything else, I kind of coasted. For a lot of years, I coasted with how intentional I was with raising my kids, even though I thought I was doing a good job. I would commit to spending more time, but when work came up, I would revert back to like breaking my promise and be like, oh, tomorrow I'll have more time with the kids. With the same thing with my wife, and then now, my previous marriage, like I blame myself, and I had to take full accountability for that. And then in 2013, I had a heart attack at 32.
Wow.
So that moment was a big shift where I was like, okay, I got to get serious and more intentional with my life and the way that I'm going to raise my kids, and I got to own the way that I got to commit to myself to be one. The heart attack actually put me on task to be more healthier, to live a more healthier life because I want to be around, even though nothing's promised and I know that. But I at least got to give it my all in that area. And I'm not perfect in it, but that was something I said, okay, moving forward, I'm going to commit. Because when I was making all this money, it was like the comfort of having money is something that was actually lulling me to sleep.
Mm,
And it's this dual-edged sword, right? You have all this comfort, but the comfort is the very thing that's like crushing your ability to grow. So I didn't know it. I had no clue that that's what was happening to me. It was like I was seeking comfort versus seeking to hold myself to promises that were going to make me grow as a man and leader for my
yeah.
family.
Well,
And so I had to commit to these things. Yeah, go ahead.
you ever hear the story about the heavyweight champion? They're never they're
Which one?
they're never the heavyweight champion for long. Why?
Because they get smoked by somebody. Eventually, somebody bigger and badder comes and knocks them out.
No, because they get all the fame of being heavyweight champion. They get the money of the heavyweight champion. They get the comfort of being heavyweight champion, the notoriety, the paycheck, right? So why does the challenger typically win? I mean, even it happened with Mike Tyson, right? With Buster Douglas, right? No way that dude should have won. But his mom died 2 days before, and who was the more desperate man? Buster Douglas,
Yeah.
right? So, money, I think, is the number one comfort. And I'll have you talk about comfort in a second. I just wanted to share a couple of my own stories. There's 3 times in my life where I remember being a complete badass. No one would have stopped me. I had $330,000 of debt, Alex. $330,000 of debt. My business partner embezzled $190,000. The girl living with me at the time forged 2 credit cards in my name, and was funding a relationship with a dude that she was cheating on me with my credit card in my name, right? And I had $100 some thousand dollars of IRS debt, right? So we're all in business. I'm a mortgage loan officer. After I figured that out and I'll wrap my head around it, biggest badass loan officer in the city of Chicago. No one would stop me, right? I'll never be that good again. I'm too comfortable. Too comfortable. I am too comfortable. I can say I want it as bad as I do. I can try and trick myself into being competitive like that. I'm not desperate like I was. I'll never be that good again. I'll never work those 14, 15-hour days again, right? I'll never go at each relationship that hard. I'll never truly care and work as hard and be as focused as I was during that time. Second time, I have two little girls, preemie twins, right? They were born 2.8, 2.5 pounds, born at 28 weeks, right? I could work 4 hours a day. I had a mentor and coach at the time. He's like, you can work 4 hours per day. The rest of the time you have to spend at the hospital. I'm going to keep you on track to work 4 hours a day. I still haven't broke the record of number of deals I did in a month. This was 8. They're going to turn 9 in 2 weeks. So this was 9 years ago. I still in 9 years haven't beat that record that I beat only working 4 hours a week, because I was desperate. I was motivated. I was focused. Right. So you're so right. Like comfort, there's that book, Comfort is a Crisis, is a crisis. And I think living in comfort is living without consequences.
Agreed. And that's where, coming from, my mother passed at 7. My dad pretty much, kind of lost his mind after that, after my mom had passed, and it was just me and my brother, and we became just latchkey kids. So there was times where we were homeless. I remember, I think I was a freshman in high school, sleeping in the Real parking lot, the Real casino. I'd go brush my teeth in the morning, change in the bathroom at the Rio. My dad would take me and to school, and I would act as if nothing. I learned how to put on a mask, in this idea. So my goal of like coming out of all of this stuff, all I want to do was make money and be successful, because everybody told me I wasn't going to be that. And so then you get to that place, and then you think you can rest. And that's where you start realizing that the man is that's not fully developed, and understanding that the discipline and growth are combined. Um, a lot of men in today's society, going back to kind of that question, like I think they're seeking the same thing. They think that the answer is comfort and making money and having a lot of things, or whatever the comfort. But what they don't realize is that that's the enemy that actually keeps you from actually ever hitting your true potential. So when I think of like men of consequence, the aim is like, how do we make sure that we as a group, as a whole, can help each other spot when somebody's in that spot, in that place, help bring them out of that, and say, hey, stay on track. You got to stay on track. If don't There's no excuses, there's no victim, there's only responsibility and accountability to your vision. And most of us have a vision for our lives it's noble. We want to be good men, we want to be good fathers and good husbands. But if you don't have anybody there to say, hey dude, like you're starting to check out mentally, because you've hit a milestone. And we're just here to tell you that that milestone is actually a trap. And that trap, what will happen is over time, is actually going to lull you to sleep, to where you're going to not be somebody that's going to be inspirational for your kids, that they would want to aspire to be like. Because I really want my kids to be, I want to inspire them and have them aspire to be like me. But I know, like me, sometimes I'm like, I don't know, be better than me. That's the kind of, I'm like, I want you to be better than me, but I'm in a place in my life now where I'm literally striving to be the best for myself. And if I can get to that point, which I don't think you ever arrive, I think it's always a journey till the very end. But if I can just stay on pace and on course, I know that I did my job as a father. I lived as a man of consequence. My kids can look at me and say, hey, my dad was a good man, and I want to be like that when I'm his age or beyond. So hopefully that answered the question. I know it's kind of uh, two part question.
What have been some wins that you've seen in your group? Just some of the other men that you've observed. You described it to Drago and myself, that you kind of facilitate this group and these men of consequences. What are some of the wins in shifts you've seen in the group? In why do you think they got there? Maybe some big notable victories, like, hey, this guy was here and now he's here, and it's because of this. Share some of those wins.
Yeah, I'll kind of go on some pillars, a couple of the pillar kind of wins. So on the business front, we every month we do, actually tomorrow is our call where you do a 5 by 5 by 5, or sometimes 3 by 3 by 3. And what that is, it's 5 minutes to discuss your challenge, 5 minutes for the group to ask clarifying questions, and then 5 minutes for solutions. So it's a framework that you can kind of get business coaching on the fly with people that have already gone through the journey, in a very quick kind of speed dating, but hopefully get to a result. We had one of our members that has a software company that's like a competitor to DocuSign, and during one of those sessions, he ended up, we gave him really good insights on like how to improve his user interface, just based off of feedback that we thought he could improve. He went back to his designers or his UI team. They fixed those things, they implemented video kind of thing that they didn't have before. And now, because of that, he's like those additional that feedback and executing and getting those updated have now got him into conversations with the likes of Gusto and Intuit. And I don't know if it's going to be like a an exit kind of a thing, but those were things that got him in the door with very very big companies now. And so that's one win on the business side. One recent win, and I don't laugh because it's not, I don't take it light, but we had a member of ours that shared with us some very he was in a very sticky situation. I'll put it this way. I'm not going to get into detail, but and he said that on the call, one, because we have these meta consequence shirts. He goes, I actually don't wear the shirt. I don't feel like I'm that person right now because of this mistake that I made. And so he shared what the mistake was. And he goes, and I feel like this is the only place where I can kind of talk about it. And so the win was the fact that this man would come on a call, he's in his 30s, talk about something that's very, very vulnerable with the group of men that, one guy just joined like the week before. And like, so it's not like he knows all these guys that intimately, he knows a good group of them at the core side of the group. He was open and willing to share that journey with us and not show up on a call and be like, everything's good. When Jeff and I talk about this all the time, like the check-in sometimes, everything's good. Like not everything's always good. I mean, sometimes things, it's okay to talk about it, and that's the place to do it. Where when he shared it with us, he wanted his feedback. We gave it to him. He made his decisions on what he needed to do. But we created that environment for him, where he didn't have that before. We have another guy, similar situation where he was going through a divorce. He ends up, he called me one day. He's like, dude, like, I just need you to know I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for what you're doing because I know I don't always show up all the time. We do a weekly call. He shows up maybe once to twice a month, maybe. He goes, but just know this. He goes, I can always count on you guys. I always know that I can count on you guys because you're always there on that Thursday morning. So when I most need it, I appreciate you because I can join that call. And this week I really needed it because of what I was going through. He calls me after the call just to tell me that. And I'm like, so those are the things that the men have shared. And there's other stories like that we're consistent. We're there. We're not going anywhere. So these men feel like there's stability in this community where, unlike maybe relationships they have with other people, or maybe they don't have relationships that they feel they can share these type of things with others. We are that place where they can come in on a weekly call and it's not about like sharing all the woes of life. It's about like, but there needs to be an opportunity to do that. Because if we don't have that, like this journey in, being a father, a man, a husband, a business leader, we obviously don't want to be focused on the negativity and all the negative stuff happening. But if we don't have that opportunity as an outlet, then where does that go? It goes maybe towards our families, right? We vent towards our kids. We might blow up on a gasket, not even know why we blew up. Well, it's because you have no outlet. You have nowhere to talk about the stuff that's real. And so you need that. And so those are like business and business. There's a bunch. We have a bunch of different business wins and personal wins like that. But those are just a few that came to mind, right?
That's awesome, man. I think that's super important. I'm on a journey of trying to share the failures with the successes, right? Like it almost makes me sick, some of the highlight reel bullshit I see on social media. It's like getting people's Christmas card, Billy's quarterback and valedictorian, and Susie's the prom queen and 4.0, right? So yeah, I think it's super important as men, especially, to be able to have an outlet of sharing pain and being vulnerable, but also talking about our successes, right? And I think a lot of us just want a little pat on the back when we're doing well and some correction when we're not. And it's almost like that's been lost. That community and that accountability has been lost. I commend you for cultivating and breeding that environment. I know we only got about 5 minutes left, so I'll let Drago take you out on some final questions.
Yeah, man,
I
I
want to. I
appreciate.
want to say one. Can I say one last thing? Because I think this is key. As men, we got the ego and pride is killing us, and it's unfortunate because there's so much that collectively we can do to help each other rise up, but men in as a whole and individually, we struggle with pride and ego. And how dare somebody tell me or show me the way? I'll figure it out. I'm not going to let another man do, it's this weird thing we have as men. And it's actually detrimental to our growth and our success. When I let that ego go in my life, is when I started to accelerate my path to millions of dollars and impact, period. But what was getting in the way looking back at my journey was my ego. I used to say, "Oh, I don't need help. I don't need coaching. I don't need this. I got this. I'll do this." And I talk to so many men that I already know like the ego's there. Boom. I'm like, I already know what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with an ego. And this is in many kind of variations of whether it's joining the group, whether it's trying to help them out, whether it's feedback they'd asked for me for, and I give it to them, and then they're like, ego, boom, up, pride. It's like, dude, you let that go, you win. You start winning in life. You keep that pride up and that ego, you will stay stuck. And that is the real talk right there. That is the one thing that if you can just, any of the guys listen to this right now, check yourself and how's your ego. If you feel anytime kind of somebody encroaches a little bit and it bothers you, just know your ego is not allowing you to grow. And if you stay there, you will never hit your potential. So anyway, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff. That's
No, I appreciate that. We know what we say, right? Your ego's not your amigo. And I just like listen, man. I love listening to both of you guys talk. So I'm probably like the worst podcast. People just staring at me, staring at the screen, like, oh, this is great. But he hit everything on the head for me because it's like I feel like the universe just connected me with these guys. Like I didn't seek out Alex. He came to me, and so like when we talk about like for me, like I want to be a better parent. Like it's great to be able to go in this group. Like, dude, I'll text him, asking questions about my wife, questions. I just feel like that's in my comfort zone. But I'm what you said about having getting all the money and then that affecting your growth. Like I don't want that. Like I'm still in the process of like I'm trying to get there, but I just feel like, man, the universe is putting me into positions and relationships that are going to allow me not to do that. So I appreciate you coming on here and breaking down what you do, and we love you lots, brother. And so anybody that's listening, man, listen, if you're watching this, is more than just recovery, but we say it every time on this podcast. We would rather take a phone call from you at 3:00 in the morning to listen to what you have going on rather than going to your funeral. We do find love. We do find recovery. We do find happiness. We do find financial freedom if you want it. We're out there. This podcast is for us to get rid of the stigma of addiction, that you can be successful. You can have everything that you want if you want it, and we're here to help you.
Yeah, and I'll just say Alex was so right. There are all kinds of addictions. I've had pornography addictions. I've had cocaine addictions. I've had alcohol addictions. I've had work and success addictions, right? I've had women addictions. I've had all of the addictions. And the truth is you can fix them all. For me, I needed to follow my faith. I'm a Christian. I needed my Lord and Savior and not to have shame around it. I needed to find my wife, Kristen. I always say I found the 3 C's, even though Kristen's a K. I found Christ. I found Kristen. That's a K, but I still say the 3 C's, right? And I found coaching and mentorship and men that are a community that I can share pain, be vulnerable with, but also celebrate my successes with.
love it, guys. I love what you're doing here. Jeff, thanks for having me on. This is needed for, again, I'm in the struggle right now. If I were to say what the touch and go for me on the addiction side is work. Work right now is encroaching to the point where I'm finding myself potentially becoming an addict to work. And I got it. And it just hit me this week when my son said to me, we were sitting on the couch, as I'll leave you with this. This is what really hit me. He goes, it's 8:00 at night. This was 2 nights ago. He goes, I have a, he goes, I have he goes, I have an announcement. I think is what he said. And I'm like, he said it like he was going to like announce something. I'm like, all right. He goes, I need your attention. And I'm sitting there, we're playing like their kids or my daughter's playing a game. I said, what's up, man? He goes, Dad, he goes, I need more of your time. 8 years old.
Whoa.
And I go, okay. I go, okay, buddy. Like, he goes, I know you work a lot. He goes, but I don't feel like I see you enough. And I'm like, dang it, dude. The one thing that I've been really fighting for was this. I thought I communicated the season I was in, and I realized there were some gaps that I had to own. So we had this great conversation to kind of reconcile. All right, this is my promise back to you. And again, keeping my word to him. And so walking away from that, I realized like I've been really dialed in to the point where dude, if somebody doesn't stop me, I will work all night. I'll work all day, all night. I'll be in front of my computer. It's not healthy. So I'm in the fight with just along with everybody else, but it's good to have, I'm glad I have a family and I have kids that are open to communicating because we built that environment in our home as well. You need to share with me if you see something off from dad, it's okay to call me out. I'm going to own it. Where I know me at 8 years old, I would have never said that to my dad. There's no freaking way I would have said that to my dad. I would have just been like, all right, my dad's not playing with me. I'd be like, let me go let me go hang out with friends. But I desired to hang out with my dad. I didn't know how to articulate it. I didn't come out and say that, but we built an environment in our home where family meetings and all these things. So our kids are very normal. They talk to us. They talk and they communicate what they want at the heart level, not at the surface level. They'll always do that too. Hey, I want a game, I want this, but at the heart level, they know how to communicate exactly what they want in a way that like it doesn't fall on deaf ears. So anyway, that's my last kind of story. I appreciate you both, guys. Thank you for having me on, and thank you everybody for listening in. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, brother. We love you. Thank you for having on.
Alex,
Thanks, man.
awesome to meet you, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. The world and our country needs more men like you. So thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a great day. Thanks.